All right, you too, man. This is part 2 of Drake being called out in the appeal brief of testosterone Xxxtentacion's killers. All right, Xxxtentacion killer calls out Drake in the appeal brief. All right, so part 1, if y'all have not seen part 1, go check out part 1. Basically, the attorney of the Xxxtentacion killers is explaining, that he was naming Drake during the trial, but the judge pretty much threw it out, said, why are you involving Drake? Come to find out, Academics was named as well, because he had a phone call with Xxx while he was alive, because X requested him to, post some pictures of Drake on his Instagram, but Academics said no, and during that, Academics warned Xxxtentacion that, even though Drake is not a gangster, he still got some people around him. So it seemed like, Academics was trying to warn him because it seemed like he might know something. I don't know. Everything is alleged. So this is part 2. Let's get it in.
Real quick about why you think the judge did this, because in the appellate brief, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is an accusation that the court might have been biased because of Drake's celebrity status. Correct me if that allegation is wrong. And in your opinion, why do you believe the court ultimately wouldn't allow the deposition of Drake?
I'll say that Judge Usman was a complete gentleman to me, and it was a pleasure to try the case in front of him. I do think that he made various reversible errors, and I think from the beginning he made a lot of calls that were unconstitutional, not legal, this being one of them. I don't want to speculate as to why, but when you're dealing with someone like Drake, which he's not a celebrity, he's a super celebrity. He's like in the stratosphere of fame. So when a judge does a 180 like that, I'll let the viewers or other people figure out why they think that it happened. But I'm not gonna speculate as to why it happened. But
I get that. I do want to ask you about this because this is another part of the appeal, and that is with respect to the testimony of this gang expert, which was excluded in a pretrial hearing. And the defense, my understanding, wanted to call Jesse De La Cruz, who they had claimed, discovered visual evidence that Drake could have had ties to the same organization as a co-defendant in this case, Robert Allen. And I believe the brief states Dr. Cruz's research revealed photos of Mr. Graham throwing the same gang signs as Allen, and Allen is that accomplice who I mentioned before who testified against his co-defendant.
And Drake, man, you are a dummy, man. Drake is a dummy because he don't need to do all this, bro. But, he's so enticed and wants to be so black, right? Because y'all know that clip that I always play, some of my blackest friends are like, you can't get into this. So he is so pressed on making people believe that he's black. That's why I think he grew out his dreads. I mean, his braids. He just wanted to be the typical rapper, right? So he surround himself with some, people that are about that life just for that imagery, just for that look, when he don't need to be. Right. In my opinion, Drake should have just been like a little Bow Wow. Drake should have been like a Ludacris. You know what I mean? You don't see them trying to be gang members and throwing up sets and all that stuff. Drake just should have just calmed down and just, but hey, that's what happens when you live in, well, I wouldn't say that, but yeah, when you have an identity crisis, I would say.
Defendants, but Cruz also revealed that people who knew Drake were allegedly seen in Xxxtentacion's neighborhood threatening him before he died. The brief reads, social media posts showed these same known Graham associates were seen in Envoy's neighborhood threatening him just prior to the murder. And then they say even more revealing is this connection that Cruz made to Drake's song lyrics, because shortly after XXX was killed, the brief writes, Mr. Graham released a song entitled XXX with suspicious lyrics, SMS XXX, that's the only time I shot below the neck. And Dr. Cruz found another connection between the murder and Drake's lyrics in the song I'm Upset. The song I'm Upset contains lyrics regarding Louis bags for body bags, the implication there being that Drake was referencing murder.
Wow. Yo, if this comes out to be true, man, Drake is just a dummy. He is so pressed. He is so insecure that he needs to validate himself as a black man, that he hangs around gangsters and try to pull off this imagery like he's hard. Like, bro, boy, Drake, if this is true, you deserve everything that's coming your way. Because for what? You don't need to be like this, man. Stupid.
But ultimately, Cruz was completely excluded from the trial, and the jury did not hear any of his findings. Mauricio, I have that right. And can you emphasize that a little bit more? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yes. Okay. So Dr. De La Cruz did proffer to the court everything that you've stated regarding the song lyrics, the fact that Drake was throwing gang signs that were the same gang signs that Allen was throwing up in different social media posts. The court strikes Dr. De La Cruz, which is a known gang expert and well known in his field, has testified over 150 times in trials. They allowed the state to put their own gang expert, Detective Polo, which really bolstered a lot of what Dr. De La Cruz said regarding the necessity to bring out this testimony. I don't believe that based on Daubert, which is the case that we look at when analyzing whether an expert is if it's appropriate for an expert to testify, I don't believe that was a legal call. I think it was error for him to do that and not allow us to put forth that testimony. And we put up pictures of Drake with Lil Wayne throwing up a Bloods gang sign and other evidence that Drake is out there flaunting gang ties. We put forth evidence of Hassan Ali, which is top 5 out there openly claiming on social media and video that he's Drake's shooter. And part of
man. I told you, yo, top 5 is going to, I said that in my videos, yo, top 5 is going to put Drake in jail. Well, not only Drake going to put himself in jail, it seemed like.
The theory of defense is to show, listen, even though these people are entertainers, okay, there's a gang related portion of it. There's a gang related side to it. And X's own mother testified that she knew about this, that she knew about when 600 Breezy traveled from wherever he was, whether Chicago to South Florida. She knew about it. She talked to him about it. So this case had more than ample evidence and ample reason to involve a gang expert.
To be clear, though, you were allowed to argue that someone else could have been responsible for this killing because you cross-examined Allen on cross-examination, suggesting that he had this link to Drake. But my understanding is you're arguing now that the trial court had put limits on your cross-examination of Allen, that violated your client's rights. Am I misunderstanding that?
No, you're 100% correct. But they did it not only with Allen, but they did it all throughout the trial. Okay. With Allen admitted that his father, known drug dealer, known firearms dealer, as the brief states, produced at least one of the guns that was used in this. When I asked him about his father and ties to Toronto and drug dealing, the state objected, and the judge didn't allow that question. So it was a constant battle for me to try and basically do my job and show where reasonable doubt existed. With Allen, with Detective Curcio, the problem here is also that the state attorney, on direct of Detective Curcio, which was the lead detective in the case, she asked, do you have any information that Drake was involved in this? And that was before the court struck him. So whatever the reasons may have existed, the moment that state attorney opens up their mouth and says that, now he's really at issue because now
you're opening the door. You're opening the door to that coming in.
Yes. And not only was it an issue of her mentioning it with Detective Curcio, but she asked him, you actually were able to verify whether or not Drake was in South Florida at the time. So in cross-examination, I asked, why would you have to verify if he was in South Florida? Why? Because he's a person of interest. And then I had to further ask, well, what did you do to, and I'm paraphrasing, what did you do to figure out whether he was in South Florida? He says, oh, my partner checked social media. So then I said, okay, so in a homicide case, the best that Broward Sheriff's Office has for a jury is to peep his Instagram. So it was basically breaking down the poor job that BSO did in their investigation and the tunnel vision that they had, and the fact that none of this was in the report. So you felt it important enough to check and verify whether or not he was in South Florida, but you never memorialized it in your report, and I'm not allowed to ask about it.
Well, did he also testified, Detective Curcio, that he learned that Envoy, XXX, had been attacked by members of Migos, right? Migos is the rap group that's associated with Drake. Was that came in, and again, you weren't able to expand upon that?
Not only did that come in, but when I asked him in cross-examination, isn't it true that the first time that the name Migos comes out in this case was a month after the murder in the first conversation that you yourself had with the cooperating co-defendant Allen? He didn't remember, had to refresh his recollection, and right there in the transcribed conversation, it basically showed that Allen, the cooperator, said the name Migos in the first conversation that they had. So it basically showed that I wasn't making this up. Like, I'm not creating it. The facts were there before I even ever alleged their involvement or filed a motion in court. They're checking to see whether or not Drake is in South Florida. That was years before I mentioned it. And Allen is saying that is talking about Migos to the lead detective a month after the murder. This is years before I filed anything regarding my theory of defense. So it was just to show that this is part of the case.
Right. And the argument is that your client didn't get a fair shake, didn't get a fair trial because you couldn't expand upon this and introduce this. I want to move quickly past Drake and ask you a couple different questions about this.
So it seemed like a lot of things that were denied, that was anything related to Drake. Could it be of his celebrity status?
Appeal. Speaking about Detective Curcio, I understand that there's also an objection that your team has with him providing opinion testimony on cell phone data. Can you talk about that real quick, what the issue was with Detective Curcio there?
Okay, well, the issue is that Broward County did not list a forensic expert, okay? And they tried to put forth expert testimony through someone by the name of Campvani and through Detective Curcio, and the court allowed them to give expert opinion as to locations of cell phones and things that are specifically left to experts, because when you list somebody as an expert, then that opens up the doors to discovery that we can take depositions of them and put us on notice to the specific details that they're going to testify to as an expert. That didn't happen in this case. And what they allowed was this individual named Campani. They allowed him to basically put forth expert testimony, and he put forth like a visual aid that he had prepared a week prior to his testimony. Okay, we were ambushed with it, and there he basically put little dots where he testified where the cell phones were exactly, and they allowed Detective Curcio to also give that type of testimony. Now, Detective Curcio is extremely experienced. I'm not going to take that away from him, and this individual Campani as well. But just because you're experienced doesn't take away the obligation of Broward County to do things correctly. This is a murder case and a high profile one at that.
There's a number of different other points that are raised in this appeal. There's things like allowing prior bad acts to come into this trial, allowing an out-of-court statement from defendant Newsom, which you argue was which his Williams defense attorneys are saying was prejudicial. If you can, what's another big area of appeal? Is it any of those two that you really think could be problematic? Why your client? Again, I guess the idea is he deserves a new trial, right?
Yes, yes, and the two things that you mentioned are pretty egregious. The one of the Newsom is really shocking. Like, they basically on redirect of Detective Curcio asked them questions and brought in a hearsay statement regarding a completely separate murder investigation that he says that he found without authenticating the cell phone, and basically said that Newsom had told somebody in some dating app or something that he had buried money in his house, and so the judge buried money, he could be catching life, and a really incriminating statement. But Detective Curcio didn't have to authenticate that. They didn't have to show what cell phone it came from. Basically, he just said, I saw this in another case, and the problem is that my client is sitting at the same table with this individual that now the court has allowed this extremely prejudicial information to come in. So that was a humongous reversible error, in my opinion, that affected not only my client's case, but everybody that was sitting there at table, including all the co-defendants.
Moving forward, though, what can we expect in terms of a timeline of appeal? When will this be heard? When will this be decided? If a new trial is granted, how does that work? Because now it's about the timeline of events. What should we expect?
You know what? I don't practice appellate law, and those are questions that I don't really want to give misleading answers to. So I don't want to give the wrong answers regarding appellate. I don't really do appellate law, but at some point they're going to file a responsibly brief, and I think that the court could invite. I think the way it is nowadays, the court can invite oral argument. When I first started practicing law, you had the right to give oral argument. I think now it's only by invitation when the appellate court wants to hear your arguments. But yeah, I mean, listen, when I read this was an 11-week trial. The jury was out 8 days. It's not like if the jury didn't think about it and came back in 90 minutes and convicted our client. The jury struggled. They had to struggle because 8 days is, I've never had a case that the jury's been out that long. And it was clear that they had questions. And I really wasn't able to properly defend my client. Mr. Williams did not get a fair trial. When I read this, I think there's like some kind of a defense mechanism when you try a case for 11 weeks that you start forgetting things. When I read this, it brought it all back, and it reminded me of really how unfair the judge was with Mr. Williams and the detrimental effects that it had for me to be able to properly defend my client.
Well, listen, Mauricio, I appreciate.
Wow, so there you go, man. Sheesh. And once again, this is just the killer of Xxxtentacion is filing for appeal because apparently, allegedly, they're calling out Drake involvement in this murder, which once again, if you've seen the last video, Drake did had a couple of bars for that seemed like it was being towards Xxxtentacion. Damn. Timing is crazy, boy. When the dominoes fall, boy, they fall, man. Golly. So y'all leave a comment down below, man. It's your boy, Damn D. I'll see y'all on live later on tonight. All right. If y'all new to the channel, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I will be going live later on this afternoon. So y'all get ready for that. It's going down. Woo. Y'all leave a comment down below.